Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Swift. I'm the founder and CEO here at Numentum. And a massive thank you to Signals for hosting this Demand Generation Summit. Now, the topic that I've chosen, and I've got 20 minutes, is relationship capital. So let me define that for you, and then I'll introduce myself a little bit more. So relationship capital is the sum of all of the relationships that exist within your own company, combined with your own professional network. Now, why is it so powerful? A transfer of trust takes place when you ask for an introduction through someone to a buyer. If the person you're asking knows the buyer incredibly well and there's mutual trust and respect between those two people, when you're introduced through that channel, the conversion rate from outreach to conversation across all industries over the last 7 years is 70%. Now compare that to the industry average of less than 1% for more traditional approaches like cold outreach, cold email, cold calling, right, which is less than 1%. Okay, so that's why I've chosen relationship capital, and that's why I firmly believe that it's the future of successful B2B go-to-market strategy. Now, all of this, in terms of my passion around it, will make sense when you understand my background. Now, back in 2012, I launched for LinkedIn, LinkedIn's own social selling business, Sales Solutions, and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I then spent 3 years with Sprinkler, which is one of the fastest growing software companies in the world. And in the summer of 2017, I did the best sales job I've ever done and asked my wife if I could leave Sprinkler and set up my own organization. And God bless her, she said yes. So fast forward 7 years, we're helping some of the largest companies in the world achieve their business objectives. But outside of Momentum, what do? Well, I'm a father, I'm a husband, right? I've got 3 kiddies that you see in the picture there. This was from Halloween here in the US last year. The theme was obviously Mario Kart. And I spent a lot of time with my kids and with my family. I work from home and very much play a very active role in their lives. And I'm a former rugby player. I love to golf, but I'm terrible at it. And the final thing I'll share with you is I'm passionate about helping people achieve their business objectives, whatever that is, making them productive and successful so they can provide the best lives for themselves and their families. That's what drives me. Okay. So let's get into this topic of relationship capital. Let me frame this up for you. So at this point in time, at the recording of this session, LinkedIn has more than 1 billion members on the platform. And the platform is still growing at literally 2 new members every single second. When I was with LinkedIn back in 2012 through 2015, I remember celebrating having 200 million members, right? So the platform has not slowed down. Now, when you think about the role that you're in, and for most people listening to this, you'll be in some sort of sales or sales leadership role. It is a hard role, right? And there's so much competition, not just from your competitors, right, and the salespeople over there, but just other salespeople from other companies vying for time with the buyer. And the challenge we also have is buyers are fed up. They are done with all of the cold outreach and the bombardment of messages that they're receiving across all channels. So the barriers are already up, right? And the best way to kind of break through those barriers is leveraging relationships. Now you think of all the buying committees and the consensus purchases that are taking place, and you think of all the people that are moving around the different organizations and building new relationships. If you can tap into the relationship capital that exists within your own organization, as well as your own ever-increasing network, and then map it to the companies that you're targeting in 2024, as well as the personas, the buying personas and the people that influence them, and start leveraging these relationships, again, the conversion rate can be up to 70%, 70, versus the industry average of 1%. So let me bring this to life a little bit with an example. Now, I've picked 4 chief marketing officers, and I've picked big companies, right? Well-known companies to everyone on the call. The first one, MasterCard, we've got IBM, we've got Nike, and we've got Walmart, okay? Now, I've never sold into any of these companies, okay? So let me bring this to life for you. First of all, I would hope going forward, if you're not doing this already after today's session, going forward, the first thing you're going to do is look to see, are there any introduction opportunities that I can leverage to get into companies and the people at those companies with whom I want to have conversations. Now, when you start looking at your network, the shared connections are potential warm paths in. However, just because I've got 16 mutual connections with the CMO at MasterCard doesn't mean that any of those 16 people know them, right? So it might be that I can't get introduced. So you have to test quite a lot to see where paths exist and where you might be able to leverage them. Now, my first question for you, and it's a rhetorical one with it being a recording. Question one, do you send a LinkedIn connection request to every single person every single day? And this is the important bit, with whom you have a meaningful business or personal interaction. Okay. I hope the answer is yes. Okay. But we ask this a lot in our own training programs of our customers. And oftentimes the answer is no. The biggest missed opportunity. When you're prospecting into an organization, whether they buy or not, the people with whom you engage along the way, connect with them on LinkedIn. All the people with whom you're working with and the teams around you and your cross-functional partners, connect with them on LinkedIn. Your leadership team, connect with them on LinkedIn. Your partner ecosystem, connect with them on LinkedIn. Your friends, your family members. A quick story to bring this to life. When we first moved into the new neighborhood in New Jersey, 2019, I met one of my neighbors and small talk, connected with them on LinkedIn as a result. And the next week I'm prospecting and I see that he's connected to all the CROs and CMOs at the companies that we were interested in at the time. So I met with him, we exchanged numbers. So I just texted him and said, hey, how is it that you know all of these people? And he said, oh, a lot of our portfolio companies, they're our leaders. So obviously start leveraging those relationships, and he introduced us to lots of those companies, and the rest is history, right? That's a personal relationship. So you've got to get into this cadence of connecting. But if you're newer in your career, or if you work maybe at a larger organization, Team Link within Sales Navigator is such an underused piece of functionality. And for those of you less familiar, it looks at all the relationships of people who have Sales Navigator licenses at your company, as long as the contract was purchased centrally with LinkedIn by your company, right? And it allows you to see, well, I'm targeting this company. I've identified these personas. Does anyone who have a Sales Navigator license at my company know any of these people or is connected to these people, right? So really, really powerful stuff. Now, back to our 4 CMOs. I'm going to go pick one of the CMOs that I'm the least connected with to show you how this can play out, okay? Now, I have 5 mutual connections. When you look at those 5 mutual connections, you have to think for yourself, well, how well do I know these 5 people? And if they received a message from me asking for a potential introduction to someone in their network, what would their response likely be, right? So Stacy and Nicole, I know them. We met through a previous life. Would they remember me? Probably. Would they be willing to go to bat for me? Probably not. So I'm going to deprioritize those 2 folks. Then I'm going to look at the 3 that you see on the screen, and I'm going to go through them one by one. But before I do, the third question I should say is, do you post on LinkedIn? And you'll see why this is important when it comes to relationship capital, but do you post on LinkedIn? The second question I've got for you is, do you post a mixture of corporate, industry, and human content on LinkedIn? Now, let me explain why this is important. Posting on LinkedIn, it's not just to educate and influence the people in your network about yourself and what you're doing currently, right? It's to stay front of mind with all of the people in your network. So in this scenario, when you've got potential warm paths into people, then you've provided value to them through what you've been posting. You've stayed front of mind with them. Plus, I hope you nurture them as well. So if they have a big life event or they change jobs, right, you ping them and wish them all the best, right? Stay front of mind. But back to these 3 people. We'll start with Naomi. Now, Naomi and I met when she was at QVC. I was at Sprinkler, as I mentioned at the start of the session. And we met once, maybe had some subsequent follow-up conversations. I don't know her brilliantly well, but we have exchanged some messages over the years. She's now the head of brand social at Walmart, right? Done incredibly well. So would I reach out to Naomi? Maybe, but maybe not initially, because if I can get referred into the CMO directly, then Naomi becomes potentially a coach, right? And I could reach out to her and say, hey, I'm going to have this meeting with the CMO. Maybe we could reconnect and let me explain why I'm meeting, and perhaps he could provide some coaching, right? So maybe not initially. Now, Michael, I met Michael during his tenure at MasterCard. Again, I was at Sprinkler. Interestingly, remember the 4 CMOs, and one of them was the CMO at MasterCard? Well, there he is. He is the CMO at MasterCard. So I potentially could leverage Michael to get introduced to him. But let's stay on point. Michael Donnelly. So he is now over at Association of National Advertisers, right? He's been there for 3 years. Now I've kept in touch with Michael, exchanged the odd message here and there, and he's commented and liked a couple of my things over the years. So he would remember me, and I think this is a valid channel to leverage, right? Now, the third and final one was Tom. I met Tom way back in 2015. I think he'll know who I am. I think he'll remember me. And we have exchanged our message here and there, and the odd birthday here and there, but not the warmest path. So you always prioritize which path you're going to go with first. I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to go with Michael. Okay. Now, once you've done that, okay, and remember, we're not looking at team link relationships in this session, but those are your colleagues' relationships. And that's a quick instant message, right, to a colleague saying, hey, I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. How well do you know him? You can bang out 20, 30, 40 of those in a day. It's all prospecting, right? And remember the conversion rates. But we'll stay on point. Determine relationship strength. Just because 2 people are connected on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean that they know each other well, okay? So you've got to go through a process of asking people how well they know other people. And it's an activity game like anything in sales, just a much higher conversion rate. So, pro tip, leverage the channel to make the ask about how well someone knows someone else that you ordinarily would use, right? So if you have a phone relationship with someone, call them up, right? Just because you've identified this on LinkedIn, you don't have to stay on LinkedIn. If you've got a text relationship with someone, text them. Right? In this example with Michael, we have a LinkedIn relationship. So I am going to use LinkedIn as the channel. Okay. Now, loads of templates available through our programs. I'm going to share one with you today so you have something to leave with, a very practical use case, right? If I'm asking Michael how well he knows William, and I haven't spoken to Michael in a little while, then I want to soften the ask a little bit and introduce something at the start of the message that shows that I've kept an eye on him as a human being, right? Then the quick question. Now, the quick question isn't, hey, Michael, it's been a long time. Can you introduce me? Of course not. You want to ask a softer question, which is, how well do you know the other individual? Okay. Let me bring this to life for you. So I've done my due diligence. I've done all of my research from a corporate and personal perspective on Michael, right? And he's the person who's going to be making the introduction, right? He's the person in my network. But I still, when I send this message, want him to feel like I've taken the time and I genuinely care, because I do, right? So hi, Michael. Loving ANA's focus on AI, right? He literally posted about it the week of. And what incredible resources for marketers, right? Can't believe it's been 3 years already, which is his tenure at the association. Quick question for you. I see you're connected on LinkedIn to William White at Walmart, the CMO, right? Pro tip, do include the LinkedIn URL for the individual whom you're interested in speaking with. How well do you know? Okay, super simple. Remember, it's a numbers game though. It's just like prospecting. This is prospecting, all right? It's an activity game. Now, in this example, if Michael, my connection, doesn't respond, what feels like the right amount of time before you follow up? And would you follow up? Okay, so yes, I hope you would follow up, right? It's a sales activity. You want to be professionally persistent, but how many days would you wait? Okay, 4 days. Wait 4 days. We've done this process so many times over the years. Okay, literally 7 years doing this with Momentum, more than a decade doing this as a process, probably more 12 or 13 years now, right? So wait 4 days. Why 4 days? Well, think about it, right? You're asking something of another individual. Just because you might be active on LinkedIn and thinking about it all the time doesn't mean the person is that's receiving your message, right? They might not even log into LinkedIn more than once a week, okay? So 4 days actually gives the person time to receive the message, right? Some people might receive it and then life gets in the way, right? And have every intention of responding, but just didn't get to it. So you've got to follow up. But 4 days is the right amount of time to give them some breathing space. Okay. So then what? Well, let's assume that the message is positive. It's going to come back and say something like, yeah, know the individual pretty well, right? Why do you ask? Or, yep, know them not brilliantly well. How can I help? Right? Or it's just no, random connection on LinkedIn. Let's assume it's one of the first two. The response looks something like this. And again, I want to provide one of them, so many templates for different scenarios, but with the time we have, we'll stay with this one. I'm responsible for the relationship between, so your company, right, and the customer / the prospect company name. This language is so important because it elevates credibility, brings relevance as to why you're reaching out. And even if there isn't a relationship, right, if you're a BDR and you're trying to build a relationship, use it, because ultimately for your company, you are, whether there's a relationship or not, you're responsible for building one, right? So it works in every scenario. I'd welcome the opportunity to speak with him or her. And then the onus needs to be on you. Okay. The person making the introduction shouldn't have to do anything other than forward the message along. If I was to craft a message, would you be willing to forward it? Now, ideally, you want to be copied, but save that ask, right? You just want a yes or a no. Okay. Remember, it's a numbers game. You're going to be doing this with lots of people and leveraging lots of relationships into lots of people, lots of companies continuously, right? And concurrently. Now, built out, what does the message look like? Hi, Michael. Appreciate the quick response. I'm responsible for the relationship between. We'll bring it to life for you, Momentum and Walmart. We wouldn't ordinarily approach Walmart as an organization, but let's roll with it. I'd welcome the opportunity to speak with William. If I was to craft a message for him, would you be willing to forward it along? Okay, so I've just built out the template for you. Now, if the connection doesn't respond, so in this example, Michael, if he doesn't respond, what do? Do you give up at that point? Do you feel as though maybe you've pushed enough, right? Do you respond? Or do you follow up, I should say? Yeah, you do. And how long do you wait? Same principle, wait 4 days. Yes, it might feel like a long time when you're trying to do activity, but 4 days fly by when you're doing 20, 30, 40, 50 of these, logging them all in your CRM, making sure you don't forget, making sure you timestamp when the next follow-up's going to be, all the activity and research around it, right? Days fly by, but not for the person who receives the message. You want to be professionally persistent, right? 4 days is the right amount of time. Now, let's play this out. The individual either comes back and says, no, not comfortable, right? But let's say they are, and they're willing to go to bat for you. What does that look like? Well, think about channels, first of all. Ideally, we always recommend email. So the person that you're going to send this message to, send it to them on email, and then they can literally just forward it along to the person with whom you're wanting to meet with, okay? With the one exception, if the person making the introduction has more of a LinkedIn relationship, or maybe has a phone relationship, like give them the information and say, would you mind calling them up and explaining this, right? And asking on my behalf if they'd be willing to meet with me. So empower them in whatever channel makes sense. But let's stay on email. Let's imagine that the individual says, you know what, send me an email, I'll forward it along. This is what it would look like. Because remember, when they forward it on, the introduction is the subject line, to be Dan Swift at Momentum. And then the person opens it because it's come. That's half the battle, getting an individual to open a message, right? But because it's come from someone they know and trust, and then it looks, you know, an introduction, that's what the ask is, it gets them to open it. Then the body of the message is critical. Now, again, you can imagine there's so many different templates for different scenarios and industries and personas, but let's just roll with this one for now. So you look at the structure of the message. Thanks again for forwarding this to whoever it is, and you're addressing it to the person who's going to make the introduction for you. Now, do your research, right? Go look at all the corporate publicly available information on both the company, the corporate information, but also the personal information, and then craft something that shows the recipient that you know, you've done your due diligence. Now, as you scroll a little bit further down in this message, you'll see we really like framing this up. So I'm responsible for the relationship between, keep that because of what we talked about earlier, it elevates. But look at this piece. Given whoever it is, role and deep, whatever experience, I'd welcome the opportunity to share how our company works with companies like theirs. Really important, reference relevant companies because they have to be ideally in the same industry, right? And personas that he's going to realize have the same or similar challenges. And really important, if you can quantify the business impact that those customers and the engagements that you've had have been able to deliver for the organization, if what you sell can be quantified in that way. Thanks again. And then go with the assumptive close and look forward to speaking with him, right? You're not putting in anything in terms of dates and times. Right now, you're just trying to gauge whether or not the individual is interested in speaking with you. If you're going for this level of seniority, they're going to have an administrative assistant, and you'll work with that person to schedule the meeting. So this is what it would look like built out. Hi, Michael. Thanks again for forwarding this to William. Now, the first paragraph in this example is quite social, right? So look into the personal research and then engage on a human level. If the individual is less socially active, right, not so much in the news, so go look into more of the corporate, the 10Ks, the regulatory filings, what the website's putting out, what the LinkedIn company page is out. Maybe go and look at other social channels like X, whatever it might be, right? But the first paragraph, thanks again for Mr. William. Looks like you had fun at the year beginning meeting in Houston. His quote, when we understand our customers, we serve them better, landed with the team here, right? It shows that you've done your due diligence. It's the first thing that they're going to read, which gets them to read the next bit. And then stick with the structure, right? It's just an introductory message. I'm responsible for the relationship between Walmart and Numentum. Given William's role and deep industry experience, I'd welcome the opportunity to share how Numentum works with his peers at companies like, now we don't work with any of their peers, right? Because of what we do, but Verizon Business, Vodafone Business, and SAP, to engage buyers in the way they want to be engaged, to increase conversion rates from outreach to conversation. Make sure it's relevant to what you know the pain is, right? I'm making this up for you all to make it work for the session, but you get the idea. It's got to, and ideally have it quantifiable, right? Verizon Business, 200 million in 12 weeks. Thanks again, Michael, and look forward to speaking with him. So the assumption is Michael then forwards it through to William, right? The transfer of trust takes place. Ideally, you're copied in it, right? Ideally, but not always. Unfortunately, the way you think about this, the person making the introduction isn't always comfortable with that ask, but isn't always comfortable because they want to see whether or not the person is open to the introduction, first of all. But make the ask, you never know. Okay. How many days would you wait? So this email has gone. Imagine you're copied, okay? How many days would you wait? And in the scenario where you're not copied, but you know it's been sent, how many days would you wait before sending your own message to the individual? Wrong, not 4 days, okay? Just wait 24 hours. Now, why that? Because you want to give the recipient the chance to respond, right, within the first 24 hours. And oftentimes they do because the message has come from someone they trust, okay? If they don't respond first, then wait 24 hours and then respond, okay? And follow up accordingly. So there is so much more I would love to go through. Time does not allow, unfortunately, but some key takeaways. So number one, get into this cadence if you're not doing it already. Connect with every single person, every single day with whom you have any form of meaningful business or personal interaction. Anyone internally within your teams, anyone in terms of cross-functional partners, anyone in the executive leadership team, any speakers that come into the organization, any trainers that come into the company and train you on something. Again, your personal network, friends, family members, any parents, right, of kids that you might have that go to school, right? The rugby coach down at the club, whatever it might be, your neighbors, right? Build your network out because it is incredible who knows who. The second one, please, right? This is what LinkedIn's designed to be. It's a professional networking website where members bring value to each other. Get into the cadence of posting every single day, not just to bring value to your network, but to stay front of mind for this very scenario, right? If people haven't seen anything of you and you're just not on their radar, and then suddenly you appear and it's like, hey, how well do you know this person, right? It doesn't land well, right? That's why posting is so important. You gotta understand that just because two people are connected on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean they know each other really well. There's a lot of random connections. There's a lot of people who have met, but only met once and connected, but haven't engaged with each other since. But equally, there are a lot of people that have worked together and have deep, deep relationships that go years back, right? That's why you've got to nurture relationships, and you've got to ask how well people know each other before making the ask for an introduction. Okay. And the last one I've got for you is when someone says yes, the onus is not on them. It's on you, right? You've got to then draft something that is easy for them to forward along. Literally, the only ask that you're asking of them, or action you're asking them to take, is take your message and forward it on the channel that they have the relationship with the person on, and make the introduction for you. Okay. So I really genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, hope this has been helpful for you. Feel free, please reach out to me on LinkedIn if this has been helpful. Reference it so I know who you are and what the context is. And then feel free to reach out to me on email as well. You've got it right there, and happily chat through anything that would be of help and use to you. So thanks for listening, and all the very best to you and yours. Take care.